I'm recording. So from this point forward, we're being recorded, and I'll figure out how to upload it onto the web, and we'll be good to go. So my point is the entrepreneurial concept is that it takes a lot more than a technician to run a successful business. And that's why I posted the other day that when people say, oh, be a great orthodontist and your practice will grow, it's so not true. I've been a dentist for 25 years, and you need to be I don't even think you need to be a good orthodontist to succeed, though I would never tell you not to be. We all know people who are crappy orthodontists who are doing amazingly well because they get the entrepreneurial and they get the managerial. So my point here is you need to do good ortho. That's bottom line. But we need to be doing a whole lot more. We need to be reading these books. We need to be understanding HR, and we need to be doing all these things if we want to be successful. So before I dive in, I have a list of about 10 things I want to talk about that I think are really good concepts. But right now, does anybody out there have anything they want to bring to the forefront or a message from the book they want to talk about? Anyone? Kevin, let me.
Well, I don't know if you guys can hear me now.
Yeah, how did you do that?
I just clicked on mute on my own screen.
Okay, cool. Then let's do it that way. That way I don't need to manage it.
So yeah, your introduction was good. From what I read, there's the technician is the start of the book, and then we have the entrepreneur and the manager. You need a blend of all three of those to be a successful business person. And more so than that is you can't do it all by yourself. At some point in time, I just want to talk about the flip side of the coin, which is I've talked to a lot of orthodontists that say they hated the business aspect, and the best day of their life was when they sold to Heartland and only had to be the technician once again. So we don't have to talk about it now, but I do want to just hear people's thoughts about if that's a viable option to take a pay cut and never worry about the business side.
Yeah. And Kev, thank you for bringing that up. I don't think that we need to sweep it under the rug. It's out. Let's talk about it. Let's be honest in terms of what the new trend in orthodontics is, which is people building up, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 offices and then selling out to the venture capitalists. And when I say sell out, I don't mean that like they're a sellout. I mean, we all know people who have 10 offices or have met people who have 10 offices and they're trying to sell out to venture capital because, they just want to make the money and move on.
That's their business model.
I'm sorry?
That's their business model.
Yeah, but has anybody here been an associate in ortho or a dental practice at some point, if not right now? Okay, almost all of us. Would you agree that your life was a million times easier at that point in your life?
Well, my life seems incredibly easy compared to the owner's life.
I saw Kyle sort of give me a half wink there. Kyle, do you disagree with that?
Well, I mean, it's easier in terms of time, but if you're not the kind of person that can be an associate, which I'm not, it made life more miserable, I think, because I was never able to control what I wanted to do. So, I mean, it depends on, like, what adds stress to your life. Like, running a business does for sure, but also having to be a slave to decisions that you don't agree with. Like, for me, that was worse. So I'd rather work, 8 to 10 every day, 16 hours a day or whatever, and be in control than be under someone else's control. But
I agree.
I don't know.
No, so. I agree. I recently quit a corporate job that I had on the side just because it was making more money. And I quit it because I realized that I'm just not a guy who works well for other people.
Yeah.
And I think does anybody here, again, show of hands, anybody here ever listen to Gary Vaynerchuk? Okay, so 4 people. For those of you in this room who are not listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, you need to be listening to him on a regular basis. The guy is an absolute beast, and he embodies what Kyle is kind of talking about. He's the entrepreneurial.
Are you listening to him on podcast or where?
Where do I hear him?
Yeah,
he's on everything.
The answer is yes. I listen to him on his podcast. I watch his videos. I took his $39 Udemy course, the one that Udemy Academy. I've read 3 of his books. I've done audiobook. The guy is ubiquitous right now. Anybody who's listening to him, you'd probably agree he's going to go down in history as arguably one of the top web entrepreneurs of our generation. He just gets it. He's where I get my marketing ideas about how to market my practice on Facebook and Instagram right now. And Kyle obviously is an expert in that. We can talk about that another time. But if you're not listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, you need to start listening to the Gary V podcast. And I'm all for podcasts and stuff that relate to orthodontics. But to be honest, I don't listen to them. I listen to the stuff that's outside of ortho because I want fresh takes. I want to learn about the people who are running businesses. So he embodies entrepreneurial. He would never work for a corporation. But if you're not an entrepreneurial person and running a business isn't for you, there's a value, as Kyle said, in kind of recognizing that. And you either go Kevin's route, where what about if I just sell out and work for someone, or you run your own business. But if you run your own business, there are definite upsides, right? You're your own boss. The sky's the limit in terms of what you can make, but you've got all this other crap you got to deal with on a regular basis. So, Kev, that's a good point. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about related to that? I suspect most of you are somewhat entrepreneurial, or you wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the way I'm going to go. I'm thinking there are, I'm looking at practices right now. There's a considerable amount of investment that goes into that. And it's not a guarantee anymore, especially in South Florida, that your practice is going to take off and you're going to get a ton of new starts. I don't know, I'm just weighing all the options right now. But right now, my life seems so simple and so easy. I get along with the doctor I work with. I show up, I do good orthodontics, and I literally deal with no management whatsoever. And at the same time, I got lucky because I'm not at a corporate gig where I feel like I'm doing anything I'm not comfortable with. But, I'm sure long term, I won't want to be there forever either.
Yeah. There's a really good point in the book that I think is worth noting right now because Kevin kind of brought it up. And again, anybody wants to jump in, please do so. But he talks about what is the primary aim for your business. I'm a big fan of writing down your business plan, and it's something I want to do more of with the group. And you need to know your mission, which I know sounds so passé and trite. What's my mission? What's my vision? Your practice should have a mission statement. Your practice should have a vision statement. You personally should have a business plan. Where do you plan on being in a year? I used to say 10 years. With the way things evolve nowadays, there's no way you can know where you're going to be in 10 years. But where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years maybe? So you need to write this stuff down, and then you need to distill it down into what is the reason you're doing what you're doing. Are you doing it because what experience is your customer going to have? Is it about just your compassion and you're going to bring them through the whole process in a very nice way? Is it that you care more than the guy or gal down the block? Is it that you're a really good listener? That you have the ability to, hear what they're saying? Are you an amazing diagnostician and you feel like you can do things better than others? Is it that you're trustworthy and you're going to take care of them because they're part of the family? Or let's be honest, are you in it just because you want to make money and you're going to do great ortho? But the driving factor in the morning is not, when someone finishes ortho and they smile and the mom is crying, that just doesn't affect you at all. It doesn't mean anything to you because you're just glad they started and paid. And as long as they're happy in the end, happy. Like, what are some of the, you understand where I'm coming with this? I think that's the key here is what's the driving factor behind what gets you up every morning to go to work? Anyone want to throw anything in there?
Let's see. I mean, right now I'm in the process of starting a practice, and I think I've talked about it on the group forum a couple times already. But I worked as an associate for 2 months, and my previous boss treated me like shit. I got paid $800 a day, and then the other days where it was a one doctor practice, he only paid me $300. Which I was just like, that's fucking horrendous, and you wanted me to take over for you in April for all 3 of your practices without letting me do any treatment exams, without letting me treatment plan with you, and then without knowing your systems. And then I'm like, all right, this is stressful. And so right now I'm about to sign the purchase agreement to buy my own practice, and I hired 2 great employees. And, my mission is to make sure my employees are happy first and foremost, because without them, my practice will not thrive and it won't grow because they see the patient more than I do. And even though I'm the face of the practice, they're what make my practice grow, essentially, and I guess my goal is to obviously make money. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. You know, being an entrepreneur is part of it means making money, but at the same time, making sure that your team is functional and can have the potential to grow and expand and eventually possibly buy another practice, incentivize them, give them ownership of the practice and not true ownership, but give them like the ability to make decisions, to give input, to allow them to contribute. If you're not willing to be open-minded and do that, then I don't see yourself being a good entrepreneur. That's just my opinion. I mean, I could really use some other people's advice too. I know, Glenn, you've seen both sides of the coin as a general dentist and an orthodontist. And then I know Kyle's pretty successful too. And I don't know everyone in the group yet, but I would like to get everyone else's input, you know, like on that issue.
I'm in
Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, and I feel like in LA at least, and maybe you guys can tell me about your experiences where you are, it's all about the experience. And so for me, in my private practice, what I'm trying to do is be the ultimate orthodontic experience. We all can do good ortho. We all can do good treatment. We all can make a patient, you know, have a beautiful smile. But for me, I've really tried to focus on treating that patient like they're special to me and making sure that at all times when they're in my office, they know that they are important to me as a doctor. And I think that goes a long way in the patient knowing that it's different than when they go down the street to the other doctor or the other orthodontist that's been around for a few years. And they know that, wow, that I'm valuable to that doctor, to that practice. I don't know if I'm investing too much in that, but I think that's important to me at least.
Jonathan, while you're still there, a question, and I want to come back to you in just a minute, Jeff, because you made two really good points. But Jonathan, real quickly, rather than the statement, I want to make the experience special and unique. Tell us precisely what is it you're doing on a daily basis to make that happen. Give me specific examples of, I do that, and you know, you can say, oh, I care. Well, we all care.
Of course.
I treat them like they're my family. We all treat them like they're our family. I'm doing the best ortho I can. We all do that. I use the best technology. What is it you're able to do? Because clearly it's working for you. What is it you do with the patients that makes them feel that your mission is coming through, if you will?
I think it's first of all, paying attention to who they are and making sure I know things about them and bringing up those things about them that I know. For example, one of my patients is in karate. And so every time I see him, it's always about karate. So like, what was the last thing you do? Show me a move. Try to get him involved and bring out his interests in the chair. I try to make phone calls myself with the patients, talk to them myself. If parents have complaints about anything or they're worried about something, or for example, hygiene's an issue, I don't have my assistant go over the hygiene with them. You know, I'm small enough at this point where I can still discuss hygiene and still be at the forefront of those issues with them. So the parent knows that they're getting special attention. And I know, again, using the word special is just using the word special there, but that, like I said, but making that extra effort and putting my own time in there, I think that the patients really appreciate that.
So what you're essentially doing is making a deposit in the emotional bank.
Yeah,
right?
100%, 100%.
Something every day, every time you see them. So, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk, for those of you who know him, talks about he has a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook, right? And his point is you give, and then you hit him with the right hook, which is the ask, right? So a lot of times you're really good, you're nice, you create that culture, but we never leverage it. And you'll hear me use the word leverage a million times because we all of us here, we don't leverage our good spots enough. We do, and we do, and we do, and then we don't ask. And we need to do more of that. So you're making deposits in the emotional bank so that when the time comes that, you know, they say, wow, you're amazing at what you do. Everybody here should be trained before their team. You should be trained that when somebody gives you a compliment, you ask, hey, Dr. Krieger, you are amazing. Thank you for fitting me in today. Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. You're a VIP patient. And you know what? If you really like what we did, I would really appreciate if you go online and give us a good review. You have to ask for that. And when you do those emotional deposits, when you ask, the likelihood of getting it is much greater. So I appreciate your input. Anybody else want to add anything to what he had to say about this?
I think that's, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? This is Zoe.
Yeah, we hear you great.
So I think that all is part of that technician component when we're small and we're still getting sort of the ball rolling. One of the things that I took away from the book is at some point you have to delegate the same thing. So that's kind of like the McDonald's part of the book, where it's that systems of how do you have the staff do some of that same emotional bank things. And so so what my takeaway on it at my stage of my career is trying to figure out how do I replicate the things that I do as me as a person, but in the other team members of the office. And that's what I'm finding is sometimes the challenge is how do you get other people to buy into your vision? And that's, I think, coming back to what you were just talking about, Glenn, which is writing down what your goals are and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Jeff hit on something before which ties into this, which was, and again, I don't want this to be all about me, but I've got the experience of having done this for a little while, and I'm the one who's paid a few $100,000 for people to try to teach me the secrets so that you don't have to pay somebody a few $100,000 to get it. Which, by the way, as an aside, has anybody here gone to Panish lectures? Has anybody gone to hers? My TC just went this weekend, and there's so much stuff we could talk about that just on the first day, I got 4 case acceptances today just from using her techniques, but we'll talk about that another time. Jeff, you talked about making our team happy, and I'm going to twist that a little bit. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to just say, I never care if my team is happy. I don't mean that to sound like a jerk. I care that my team feels cared for. I need my team to know that I care about them, but I have 3 kids, and I could care less if my kids are always happy. I care if my kids, if anybody ever listens to Dennis Prager, he always asks that question, and I'm up. But when your kids are grown up, do you hope that they're happy, well-adjusted, successful, or honest? Right? Which one of those 4 things do you really care the most about? And the answer should be honest, because that's a character trait. And I care that my team is honest and that they buy into my mission, because I know if they do those 2 things, they're going to be fulfilled, and I really don't care if they're happy. Now, I don't mean that like I want to make them miserable, but when I tell my team, hey, folks, we've got a CE course in February that we've got to go to because it's important, and they have other things to do, they're not going to be happy. And I'm okay with that, because as a boss, if you go, well, you don't really have to be there. I know you don't want to be there. You're guaranteed to fail, right? It's like kids. I hate to say that. So I agree with everything you said. I just don't care if they're happy. I don't go out of my way, but every one of them knows. And anybody who knows me in life as a friend knows, if you call me at 2 a.m. and say, bring a shovel and some duct tape, right? I'll be on the next flight. I'll be at your house. And my team knows that I'm always there to back them up, and I will never make them look bad. And I think the 2 things that kind of tie together what you talked about and what OE talked about is that they have to feel like you genuinely care about them. Even if the old adage, you have to fake it till you make it, they need to believe that even when you're coming down on them about something they did wrong, even when you're correcting them, hopefully at your 90-day reviews that you should be doing, that I do every 90 days, a written review that goes into their folder. Even when I'm coming down on them, I'm telling them how amazing they are and how good they are, because if my employees can't take constructive criticism, then they shouldn't be in my office. They're the wrong people. So going back to Oe's question, how do you get them to buy into your vision? You include them in it. So if you read Patrick Lencioni's Death by Meeting, which is another amazing book, you're going to understand how to run an effective team meeting and which meetings you should be running. And when you make your policies and systems, don't make the mistake of buying a manual from somebody, and don't make the mistake of one day going, crap, that lab case wasn't here. That's it. I'm writing a policy and system. And you write this policy and system, you give it to them and go, here you go. Here's a policy and system, and here's how we're going to do it from now on, because that was your vision, not theirs. So when you do a policy and system, you do it in a team meeting. Every week you should have a team meeting, or every other week, and you do these policies and systems. And the policy and system is kind of like what, if anybody saw on RD, the post I did about the bonus, the policy and system on there, that's a policy and system that we do in the office exactly like that for everything. And our policy and system manual, which we scan in, Kevin, you've seen it. It's like this thick with everything.
I have it pulled up right now.
Yeah, it's like everything. Kevin and I went to residency together, so he had to deal with me for 2.5 years. But your policy and systems go for everything on how to answer a phone, how to greet a new patient, how to send a video for a new patient exam after the new patient's been done, to thank them for coming in. Whatever you want should be a policy and system. And that's another thing in this book is about the turnkey franchise model. What does he say? Give me a second. Darn it, I don't know where I put the note, but I think he says something, and give me a second. He says each position should be created to be operated by people with the lowest possible level of skill. This brings about simplicity in the job descriptions. So we often complicate matters, but you should write it. Your wife or husband who aren't involved in dentistry at all walk into your office and they can run it. And and answer your question, you've got to do it with them. Because I've tried to write my own policies and systems and they failed miserably. When you have your lead assistant who's in charge of supplies, write the policy and system and bring it to the meeting, all of a sudden the engagement changes. And you sit back and you go, whoa, I'm the leader, I'm a CEO of a team now, and they're doing the work because that's in their job description. And last but not least, before I leave this rant, is another thing we should consider having in our offices is an organizational chart. And from a show of hands, how many of you have a well thought out organizational chart for your practice? So, good. So, the one who asked the question is actually the most prepared. An organizational chart. You want to talk about your organizational chart real quick?
Yeah, I just made it on like PowerPoint. I think there's like those little templates and it just has like little squares of all the different positions and then sort of like different areas that like interconnect, so sort of like the TC and the assistants and then finances or something like that. So just kind of showing like as a visual diagram kind of how the different positions in the office connect, but also I have another like version of it that has like the new patient experience versus the patient experience versus the finance part or the marketing.
Right. So I just sent everybody a link through chat. It's for a program called YED. It basically got my master's thesis done. Without that program, I would have been dead. It allows you to draw diagrams really quickly and really easily for anything you ever need. And my organizational chart has me at the top as CEO. And if someone reminds me tomorrow, because I'll forget tonight and I'm battling a nasty cold. And so if you hit me up tomorrow, I'll make sure I post it. And I think that some time should be spent on an organizational chart because it will change your life. Because even though the group is orthopreneurs, we need to deal with the management and the leadership like Gerber talks about. And my organizational chart has me as the CEO, and then I think 8 different categories. And within each category, the jobs that are necessary and somebody who's in charge. Who's in charge of OSHA? Who's in charge of HIPAA? Who's in charge of lab? Who's in charge of new patient process? And you sit at a team meeting and you delegate to everybody and people take ownership. So when I want a policy on our HIPAA, the person in charge of HIPAA, they're going to write that policy. And this is the sort of the gut check moment for all of you, where you have to remember that Henry Ford saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're usually right. So if you're going through your head right now saying, there's no way my team is going to do this, there's no way I can pull this off in my office, you're completely right. But if you believe that you can do this, you can do this. I've done it in 2 separate offices when I was a GP, and I will not have a team member who's not engaged in doing something in my office. So if you remind me tomorrow, I'll post you my organizational chart. Take it, run with it. You can't edit it because you can only really edit it in this graphics program, which is really easy to learn. But someone remind me tomorrow and I'll take care of it for you, okay? Anybody want to add anything to this part of it?
In your systems and policies manual, I'm sure you had a job description for each.
Say that again, Kev.
In your manual, you had job descriptions for each position in the practice?
You know, I was really crappy at that for a while. You know, it's really easy to parent somebody else's kids, right? So you can sit there and say, do this and do that. And oftentimes I'll give advice that I wasn't following. But the good thing about the group is it's made me responsible to do the things I talk about. And I have written policies and systems for a job description for every person in my office that they sign. I make sure they approve it. I make sure there's nothing on there that that they say they're not going to do, because what's the sense in having a job description if they're not going to do it? And so I now have them. Does anybody here use like an HR firm like Bent Erickson or anything? I just hired them, and I'd strongly recommend it. And if I have a financial interest in any company, I will tell you, and I have no financial interest whatsoever in Bent Erickson. I just paid full price, and they wrote up my HR manual. I think it was like $2,500 or so. Best money I've spent. It talks about everything. So you'll get a 150-page manual that you give to an employee and say, here's your vacation benefits, your health benefits, what happens with CE, what happens if you go out on maternity, everything you need to know about the office. So I would strongly recommend you do that. And my guess is in the course of that, they'll help you define job descriptions. I'm not sure. But if anybody wants to see job descriptions, remind me again, and I'll show you the ones that I have for my team. And I'll also show you my 90-day reviews that I sit down with every employee for at least, you know, it's usually during a lunch meeting in my office. They bring the lunch and we sit and we talk about it. Shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. Sometimes there are tears. Sometimes there aren't. But your team wants honesty. And so anything you need, I don't have everything. You know, this is how much I know, and this is how much I have to learn. But you know, I'm sort of the footsteps in the snow that you can sort of step in. And I look forward to getting a lot out of you guys. So whatever you need, just email me or say it in the group, and I'll just share it with the group. Sometimes there's so much stuff, I don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean?
Hey,
Yes,
Glenn, sorry.
Well, in the book, it just says each position should have a position contract with the list of things for that position is accountable. And even if people are performing multiple jobs, they should agree and sign each of those contracts. So I guess my question is, one of the things that we're dealing with right now in our office is we just got, I don't know, between the couple offices we have 8 scanners right now, intraoral scanners. And as you convert from analog to digital, the workflow and the process of submitting lab cases and Invisalign, everything changes a little bit. So everybody has their old job descriptions, but when we add something new, they don't look at the fact that they're not having to take alginates anymore. They want us to have a records tech or somebody to do all the new lab prescriptions and send to for Invisalign and sending out all our appliances. We're completely digital now. I guess what I'm getting at is when we add, as the company and the business change and evolves, and we add new tasks, people say that, or team members say that they don't want to have anything else added to their plate. But the way myself and the other doctors see it is, you know, we kind of pay them to be there for 8 hours. If there's more stuff that they can do in that 8 hours, they should be expected to do that. I guess if anybody has dealt with similar things, how do you ask your team to do more or do extra tasks without automatically giving them a raise?
Easily. If you say to me, I don't want to do any more, I'll say, that's no problem. I have many offices where you can do less. Go enjoy. And I don't mean that as a jerk. My team has worked pretty darn hard. Who here is in the process of growing a practice and is not in a mature practice right now? Right? So if you're smart, you're probably slightly understaffed, right? So you feel like every one of your employees has like those plates spinning and they're trying to keep them going and things fall through the cracks. And I feel terrible asking them, but I also have a bonus system. So they know when they hit bonus, they're making money. They're also doing really good work. So they know they're getting fulfillment from that perspective. And most importantly, I think this is the key, is an open line of communication. So the best protection you have against employees who are good employees but are feeling overwhelmed, which is what I'm hearing you say, is you have to have a daily meeting You have to have a weekly meeting, and this is straight from Patrick Lencioni. A daily meeting, a weekly meeting, a quarterly meeting, and an annual meeting. You have to have 4 separate meetings that are going on regularly. And for those of you who figure, well, how can I spend all this time? How can you not spend all this time? It's the old sharpen the saw. So Kevin, for instance, addressing your issue, if I said to you, hey, we got the scanner, you got to be in charge of this workflow, whatever, and you said to me, you know, Kevin, Dr. McCaffrey, I am maxed out. You know, I'm doing everything. We're understaffed. Since Susie quit or went on maternity, I'm doing 3 jobs. You know, we all hear this. What am I supposed to do now? Your answer is, Susie, that's a great point. You can agree with me that this is something that needs to be done, right? We just can't ignore it. And she's going to say yes. Say, great, let's discuss this at the team meeting next week. We've got to solve this. And your stance has to be, look, patients need us to do this. We have to do this. We're not hiring a records tech if we're not ready for it yet. Someone needs to step to the forefront for the patient's sake. So Kevin, if you're going to step to the front and you're going to do the records, then how about I take HIPAA off your list? How about I take taking photos off your list? Because Susie down over there is really good at it. Susie, if Kevin takes over this, can you take over that? Right? Look for the win-win. But you have to have that meeting. It doesn't happen in the hallway in a 15-second conversation, which inevitably ends with you being pissed off and them being pissed off, and then the passive aggressiveness kicks in, and now you don't know where you stand with them. Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they looking for a new job? Are they going to stay around? Are they worth keeping? Or should I fire their ass because they just were insubordinating to me? So you have to have those meetings where everybody's sitting down in a room, knee to knee, eye to eye, and you bring these tough topics up. And most importantly, there's a secretary who's documenting them. And that's the way I've dealt with it. Anybody else? How have you guys been doing it?
So Glenn, can I chime in a little bit?
Sure, please.
So I've seen, when I was an associate, I saw a lot of disorganization where there was like very experienced assistants, and then he hired a bunch of newbie general dentist assistants who weren't they're new to ortho. Like I had one assistant who didn't even want to take out wires and made me do it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm the associate. I'm going to be nice to you. But if I was your boss, you would have been out of here 2 seconds ago, you know, because what's the point in hiring you when I could do it myself, you know? And then right now I have 2 employees and their attitudes are great. I pay them really well, but they have very good attitudes. I think as long as they're trainable, I think that's when you can have really good employees who are willing and able to be cross-trained. And I think cross-training your employees is really important. Now, to touch on the Kevin's scenario, I feel that either they're not internally motivated or they might just be stressed out. But a part of being a good entrepreneur and a good business person is what Glenn was saying, having these meetings and directly addressing the problem. Because sometimes I'm like, why don't they get it? Why don't they get it? And I'm like, I never showed them. I never explained to them what's on my mind because I'm not psychic and they're not psychic, you know? So maybe we just have to like sit down, have a meeting and discuss, okay, I'm sure like you had situations where like, oh, why didn't Johnny get this done or something like that, right? I would chart it down so that when you actually have your meeting later on and discuss that specific scenario, you can bring it up and say, okay, this needs to be addressed. We can't have this done anymore, but let's figure out a way to do it. And then maybe you can ask for their input, because a lot of the times you see that a doctor usually just says it's my way, their highway, but sometimes they might have a better way of constructively giving you good feedback in how to solve the problem. And I don't know, I think that helps a lot.
You touched on some good points there, Jeff. One thing that's worth noting is it's really, really easy for us when we're an associate to see somebody do something and we go, I'd fire your ass for that. And then it's our office and we realize that we have to go hire another assistant and we're not quite so cavalier to fire their ass. And we're like, oh, well, you know, can you work on that for me? And if you haven't done it, I know I certainly have. But Kyle, someone asked a question and I'd love for you to expand on it. Why did you mention that you call goals? I think I know why, but goals are called rocks.
Yeah, it's an extension on this kind of analogy of filling a jar. So like if your entire workflow or business is a big jar that you got to fill things into, there are rocks, there's sand, there's water. If you put the water in first, you can't fit the rocks or the sand in. So you need to start with the rocks. It's the big ideas. And so quarterly we have meetings and we establish rocks for each division. So the clinic comes up with 5 rocks, the admin comes up with 5 rocks, the marketing team comes up with 5 rocks. You work on that throughout the quarter, and inevitably you accomplish all those big kind of hairy goals. If you just, focus on the minutia, the sand, the water, the, trying to cut costs on L pops or, whatever like nonsensical thing it is, or get every bracket on, or see patients in 20 minutes each. I mean, these are important things, but you got to have these rocks that you focus on and you prioritize, or otherwise you won't get them done. It's real effective. I would say of hiring and firing, the thing you said about being cavalier when it's someone else's employee is so true. But you have to have a climate in your office whereby when people break the rules, especially when they're dishonest or they, insubordinate. That's the right way of saying it. Whenever someone's, starts mutiny, they slow down the bus, however you want to say it, they've got to go. And I think if you're able to do that every 6 months or so, or maybe even more frequently as needed, and as someone I don't have a ton of, employees, I got 10. But when you do that, it really gets people to kind of tighten up a little bit and work better. And so I think they learn to respect you as long as you take care of them. Like you said, I'm not seeking joy for my employee. I'm seeking a fair and equitable job whereby they feel like they understand the rules and it's treated justly. It's kind of like, what king do you want to be? Do you want to be a king that gives everyone what they want, or you want to be a king that does things fairly and justly? And truthfully, I think employees want someone who's just more than anything. And if they think it's fair, even if they're being punished or being forced to do something they wouldn't rather do, I think they can respect you if you're just and you're consistent and you've clearly explained how things are going to be and you stand by it. I think it's when bosses are inconsistent and kind of emotional that they don't like it and they don't feel like it's a place that they want to work at. So anyway, and so on.
Kyle, could you share with us a couple of your rocks for this quarter and how they're incentivized?
Oh man, that's a good question. We have a quarterly meeting in April. I'm trying to think. They would know what they are because they have to be accountable to them. I'm trying to think of what some of our rocks were this past quarter. Some of them aren't just like crazy. God, what were they? That should be an answer I should give. Let me see. Oh, well, here's one of them. So like last quarter, one of them was wanting the clinic to schedule more appointments. And so what we'll do is monthly, we'll look and make sure that they're doing it. I mean, that one's kind of a little bit easier to sort of understand. One of them for the admin team was making sure that they handed out referral cards. And so we sort of counted up how many there were, how many patients there were. And we established each week how many they should have handed out just to make sure they were doing it. Things like answering phone calls. So we use like a call tracking system so we can see like what percentage that they, answered on time and all that kind of stuff. So we set certain goals for that. Even just like simple things. Like if you notice like that they're going through too many L pops, I know I kind of mentioned that in passing, but you can make that kind of like a rock and then you revisit it. Or if it's like a new system, like we're going to start 3D printing in the next month, you can set that up as a goal. And then if you didn't accomplish it, thing is, whatever you set up, you let them, and Glenn said this, you let them make that decision. You're letting them form these ideas and brainstorm these ideas. And you kind of guide them. You maybe bring things up, but they'll put it on their list and they take ownership of it. And then you have to always come back and analyze it. If they think you're not going to come back and check on it, they won't do it. And so the beauty is we have an office manager and she keeps all this organized. And so she'll show up at the meeting. I just show up. I don't do any of the planning. And so she's got all these things and then they do them. And then we check back every month. And then also at the quarterly meeting, they have to present on it. So they say, here's what our goals were and here's how we did.
Because whatever you monitor improves, right?
Right. Yeah. And if you don't monitor them, it's just like anybody else. They're going to just not care and they're not going to do it. So, and I think like running a business, kind of like what this book talked about, it's about having levels too. And so like McDonald's doesn't just have grunts at the bottom, making $8 an hour. They've got people, middle management and upper management, and they've got a CEO and so on. So I think within our businesses, as we grow, you start to create levels, and that just keeps people honest and it keeps it where you're not having to do everything.
I agree. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes I used to make early on was feeling like I had to do everything, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point you have to realize that your job is to produce. you are a producer and a visionary. It's your job to steer the ship and to make the money, but you're not really doing the work. You're marketing, you're doing the best you can, but you're running it from the top of that organizational chart, as I talked about. And if you build that organizational chart down, then the things that Kyle talked about become real easy. And we've been at this for about 45 or 50 minutes. I think we've had some good stuff, but I really want to turn this for the last 10 minutes. I want everybody who's comfortable being involved here saying, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to take to your office tomorrow or the next day you're in the office that you're going to do a little differently because of the time you invested in the book and with this? And I'll tell you, for me, I know it's simplistic. I'm going to go back to monitoring. I'm going to set up quantifiable monitoring goals and measurable systems, because if you don't have a system to measure, then it's not quantifiable, for specific things in my office that matter to me. And I'm going to spend the weekend figuring 3 things that I need to monitor more carefully, because we all watch our production, we all watch our collections, we all look at our bank account once a day to see what's in it. But there's so many other things that I could be monitoring that I'm not. And so I thank Kyle and Kevin for that. If we go around the room, tell me, what are you going to do tomorrow or the next time you're in the office? Is it going to be meetings? Is it going to be policies? Is it going to be organizational chart? Is it something different?
I'm going to start off with a flow chart.
And after you, Nick, I think I saw you raise your hand, right? Okay, so after Kevin, Nick, you go.
Well, just want to start off with a flow chart. We have an office manual with systems and policies, but I don't think it's been updated in the last 7 or 8 years. So pretty sure a couple things have changed around the office. We have 3 more locations since that was written in, and we're all digital. So that definitely needs to be updated. And as we hire more team members, it'll make it a lot more streamlined for them as well.
Excellent. Nick?
Yeah. So the book, I think, did a great job of pointing out, from somebody you hire, an employee standpoint, way easier for them to come on and learn what you expect of them when you have everything written out. Even like the hotel with the pictures and everything, and the different categories of what they need to do to prepare a room at different times of the day. I mean, I can definitely do better writing that stuff out, and then that passes up those moments. You're like, why don't you just get this? Why can't you figure this out? But if it's written down, a lot easier.
Great. Anybody else? Leon?
So I'm trying to figure out this organization chart. I have in my office just me and 2 staffs, and we pretty much do everything. Is it realistic to implement that? I mean, if I show it to them saying, here, we're going to do this, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. So any comments on that, number one? And then I sort of thought about that. Maybe I can just start off having each one of us write 10 things down on what we're responsible for, and then have each other sort of add a few more things onto each other's list. And then you can sort of come up with, a generalized guideline on what each person is kind of more responsible for, or have somewhat of a priority toward a certain direction. And, because there's 3 of us is making office running. So we gotta each one of us has some sort of emphasis. And, if by having them describing their daily job, daily tasks, then I can get a sense of direction for each one of them. But if it's just 3 of us, I don't know if I can make a really specific organizational chart. Yeah.
When I started my practice, Leon, I bought a practice 2 years ago it had 35 active patients. Guy had been there a year, didn't work at all, didn't do anything. It was me and 1 employee, and I had an organizational chart. It's kind of silly, right? But there's an old saying by General Norman Schwarzkopf, if you remember him from Desert Storm. He had an old saying that I love: shined shoes save lives. And what he was trying to say is, just by virtue of having structure and implementing that concept in your life, it's going to trickle down to everything else. So when there are only two of us, yeah, it was easy to figure out who did what, but we had structure. And it trickled down so that when she answered the phone and I asked her to use specific words, she used them. So yeah, I would definitely implement it. And if they look at you and go, is this really going to happen? The answer is yeah. And when we hire somebody else, the good news is as we grow, we're going to hire somebody else who's going to pick up some of these tasks. And that's another incentive to them to grow the practice. It's a measurable, quantifiable thing they can see that I have 14 things I need to do now. I'll only need to have 7 or 8 when we hire another person when we're busy enough. So I do think that you have a good point there, but I think it's valuable. Anybody else want to throw in anything they're going to do tomorrow?
I would just kind of add to that, just highlight that, like, whether it's an organizational chart or it's an employee manual or it's whatever, like, kind of ideas you get from eMyth about, building your business to be a turnkey, you need to pretend like you're bigger than you are at a younger stage, or else you'll never get there. So if you want to be a successful organization, you better act like one. It's sort of like dressing up like you're important in terms of how you dress to impress someone, even though you may not have anything to show for it. I mean, kind of like what you said about shining the shoes is kind of a good way to think of that. So there's no better time to start acting like you've got 10 employees than right now. So then it makes it make more sense as you add other employees into it. That's all they've ever understood. One thing I'm going to focus on, it's kind of, I don't know if it's even like based on the book, but I can't remember who it was that said it, but is just, I talk about, finding our why or our mission statement or vision or whatever, but is kind of working into the notes when we talk about the next appointment is really focusing on what patients are interested in so that so we all want to, kind of invest in people and human capital and that sort of thing. But I want to make that a real highlight. That's going to be one of our quarterly goals is to every time next visit, we're going to change these wires, but also we're going to ask so-and-so about this specific thing. And that's kind of outside of what we're talking about, but that's the thing I'm taking away from tonight is that idea, whoever that was talking about that with karate, is to kind of work that into our notes. So a lot of this other stuff is great. And I got a lot out of the book, but that's the one thing that's clicking with me right now. So we're going to work that in the notes that actually happens. So
nice.
That's what I got.
Kyle touched on something real quick. Like every day I live my life like I'm Kevin McCaffrey. I try to walk and talk and be Kevin. But since
Good luck.
Yeah. But you did touch on something. I know that most of the people in this room are relatively younger in terms of business experience. And I made a huge mistake in my life the first time through. And Kyle hit on it. And I want to share it with you really quickly. The whole fake it till you make it, really important. And we all do this, and I still do it since I'm still building a practice, right? When someone asks you, how's your practice going? Always answer, amazing. It's going awesome. Couldn't be better. You may have had a tough time making payroll early on, right? Leon's got 2 employees. For all I know, I barely paid my rent when I was at that stage of the game. But I learned years ago, I was at a dinner party that a friend of mine was throwing. I'd owned my practice for about 2 years. And someone said, where are you going? And I was honest. I said, it's fun. It's growing. I'm doing great work. My employees are awesome, but it's tough. I'm working. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody. My friend pulled me aside after the meeting and said to me, when people ask you how you're doing, say awesome. Couldn't be better, because that fake it till you make it, you will start to believe it as well. And nobody ever, I tell my team this, I tell my kids this, nobody wants to hear you complain, ever. So Kyle, that was a good point. And remember, if nothing else tomorrow, when people ask how the practice is going, or when one of your patients asks you, so how's it going here? Amazing. Thank you for your support. We're growing like crazy. Even if the phone hasn't rung in 3 days, I can't believe how amazing it is, because they'll start buying into it. You'll start buying into it, and it only pays dividends. So Jeff, did you have something you wanted to say, Jeff? And I saw Andre, you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm going to bring that up to both my employees. I like that idea where I've been noticing that I like to put my emotions on my sleeve, and sometimes I tend to vent about what's going on in my life, but especially with the growing pains of starting to practice. But I think I'm going to tell them, like, hey, anyone asks, you just gotta fake it, like say it's amazing, like we're growing, we're exponentially growing, like it's great, and like, so I think that's what I'm gonna bring to my employees the next time we meet up and talk.
Nice.
Thanks, guys. Hey, I gotta take off, but thank you.
No worries. And we're about done in just a second. Andre, what did you want to add?
Yes, just along what Jonathan and Kyle had mentioned, one of the things that we really try to do in terms of being special, trying to make that connection with our patients, is the social media aspect. So especially Facebook, for instance, and some may agree or disagree with this, but I become personal friends with all of my patients. I ask them, hey, can we be friends on Facebook, without sounding creepy, we take a photo at the bonding appointment, and I ask them to post it and tag us and all that. And I try to make an effort to really connect to people and to see what's going on in their lives. And then I try to put notes. I have a section in our practice management software where as much as possible, I go in and I put notes so it can be topics of conversation at future appointments. So that's something that I think is really important, and it kind of shows people that that you care, that you're trying to make a connection on a more personal level with them. I've actually had moms kind of say this, oh, it's kind of nice. Oh, so you went to this concert yesterday? How was it? People are seeing what you're doing out there, and I think it's really fun to be able to have that kind of connection with patients. In terms of the book, one of the things that really struck a chord with me was I thought it was pretty cool how they said that you really should run your business as if it was a franchise. In other words, you got to have all your systems really made up so that if you wanted to open, 10 more offices tomorrow, they would all function in the same way. I mean, I'm super far from getting there, but that's going to be one of my goals, is just start setting some systems, because I don't have that many right now, if I'm honest.
Just do one every 2 weeks. And Andre, if you do one every 2 weeks, when I did the Schuster Center, they gave us a sheet that when we went four times. When we came back 3 months later, there were like 6 to 8 systems we needed to have done. And if you do one every 2 weeks, you'll have 26 policies and systems at the end of a year. You'll have 52 after 2 years, and you'll start picking up speed. And before you know it, you'll be revising them. So, the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Just do one policy and system at a time, and you'll be fine.
That's a really good idea.
Just do one. Don't try to nail out 5 or 6 at a time. Pick the one thing in your life, in your practice right now, that's the hardest thing for you to deal with. And if you don't know what that is, what's the one thing you go home and your spouse or your family asks you about it, you're like, oh my God. Like, we're going to have somebody on in 2 weeks from tonight, Eduardo Briceno, the one who did the TED Talk, and his thing is going from the learning zone to the working zone and back into the learning zone. So his point is, when a tightrope walker is practicing new tricks, they don't do it on the high wire with no net. They go back to a ball pit, a foot above a ball pit, and they practice in a very safe, clean, controlled environment. But we never do that as clinicians. We want a new policy and system, so we go home, we write one up, we bring it the next day, and we implement it. And that's the wrong way to do things. So just take one thing at a time, put it in a safe environment. Anybody going to call the police for Andre? It looks like he's in trouble.
My kids are going crazy here, man.
But anyway, my point is, whatever you do, everybody, the take-home message, including Kevin, who I just don't know what's going on Kevin's end right now. Welcome to my 2.5 years in residency with Kevin, okay? But unfortunately, sunglasses were usually involved. My point is, whatever you do to your practice tomorrow, whatever changes you choose to implement, the only advice I can give you at this point, having done this for 25 years, is do not take a shotgun and start blowing big holes in your practice trying to do big things. Pick one thing that's on the top of your list, bring your team into it for accountability's sake, and however long it takes, a day, a week, a month, get that finished before you go on to something new. Make sure there's accountability, and then the things in the book, from entrepreneurial to management to technical, implement the same way. Do it once, do it thoroughly, do it with your team involved, and make sure that everybody takes responsibility, and don't try to change your practice overnight. It's gonna take years to get there. Just do one little thing at a time, and I hope that helps you out. Any other questions or comments before we sign off for the evening? So I don't see anything. So all I'm gonna say is, first of all, thank you for joining me on this journey, not just tonight, but I'm getting so much out of the group from all of you, and you're making me way better at what I do by just the stuff you're bringing up. And my mind is going crazy right now, all these things I want to share with you, and I'm going to try to bring up some of them tomorrow. But we've got next week, I think the 13th, I'm going to go through pretty quickly and efficiently how to become a CE provider. So that way everybody here can understand it's not quick and it's not easy. I'm going to warn you that now. But as I tell my kids, if it was easy, everybody would have it. And we're looking to dominate our regions, and we're willing to do whatever it takes. Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to make the learning curve way shorter for you by having lots of examples, which is what they're going to ask for. So you'll take my stuff and just rewrite it. So when they get 15 applications that all look identical, they'll have no idea why that happened. And I know the guy who runs the department, so I'll warn him. But next Thursday night, we've got that. And then in 2 Thursday nights, we've got Eduardo Briceno, who, I got to be honest, it's a miracle we got him, because the guy's got 1.3 million hits on his TED Talk. And if there's anybody out there you want me to track down, I am tireless. I hound these people. I have a conversation going with Michael Gerber about getting him into the group for a Q&A for 20 minutes. And he said he's willing to do it. I just don't know what his terms are. So if there's somebody out there you want, I haven't given up on Gary Vaynerchuk, though I don't think we're going to get him. Just let me know who you want, and I'll do my best. So with that, I say thank you to everybody. Looking forward to chatting with you in the group tomorrow. And I'll do everything I can to help you all out. So have a great evening. Peace, deuce. Have a great evening. We'll speak soon.